Good afternoon. Okay, so what we're talking about here is a new unit on congruent triangles. So what we mean when we say congruent triangles, we mean that they are triangles with the same angles, angle and side measures. That means that all the corresponding parts, angles, and sides are congruent. So what do we mean by that? If you look at this congruency statement, we can see that angle A, because of its one little rainbow line there, is congruent to angle B with the one line. Angle D. Angle A congruent to angle D. Angle B with two little lines there is congruent to angle E with two lines. And angle C with its three lines there is congruent to angle F with its three lines. Also, that was talking about the angles. Remember, there's 6 parts to every triangle. There are 3 angles and 3 sides. So we talked about the angles, now the sides. We can see here by the way this is marked with one line here that side AB is congruent to side DE. Notice I had to go to this angle here and go upward. The markings are the same. Okay, so AB is congruent to DE, and then we have BC with 2 lines here, congruent to EF with 2 lines there. Then we have line AC with the 3 lines, congruent to line DF with the 3 lines marked there. So this, looking at the way these sides are marked, that is what we mean by marking the triangle. We mark it so that we can tell from this triangle to this one which parts are congruent. And notice they all have a match over here. So one line here, one line here, one line here, one there. 2 little rainbow lines there, 2 rainbow lines here. 2 little straight lines here, 2 straight lines here. 3 at this angle, 3 lines at this angle. 3 lines on the side, 3 lines on the side. So every part of this triangle has a matching part, a corresponding congruent part on this triangle. So now our congruency statement is triangle ABC. ABC is congruent to triangle DEF. DEF. Now notice that if I look at angle A, first one here matches the first here. A matches D, B matches E. And then C, the last letter, matches F, the last letter in this triangle congruent statement. So a valid congruent statement must match all corresponding angles and sides. CPC TC. So what this means is that corresponding parts to congruent triangles are congruent. So corresponding parts of congruent triangles are congruent. I think I messed up the spelling of congruent there. This is the correct spelling. Okay, so if we know 2 triangles are congruent, then we know that every pair of corresponding parts is also congruent. Okay, now, one way, excuse me, one way to set up our corresponding parts is by looking at the triangles as we're looking here. Another way is by going by the congruency statement. Notice the order of the letters. So what this is saying is that triangle JKL is congruent to triangle PQR. So the angles are going to be matching like this. So I look at the first one here. Angle J is congruent to angle P. Then we have K. Angle K, the middle one, is congruent to angle Q, the middle one there. Then the last. Angle L is congruent to angle R. Now when I do the sides, well, first of all, let me point out. So when I look at this, JKL, that should be in order there. Then PQR, order there. So everything on this side goes with this triangle. Everything on this side goes with that triangle. Now the sides. Okay, sides have two letters. So I take the first two. JK is congruent to PQ. Then the next two, KL, is congruent to QR. Then the first and the last, JL is congruent, get that there, to PR. First and last, first and last. Okay, so that's how we would set up the congruencies for the sides and the angles. Now, writing another valid congruency statement. So as long as I'm properly matching them up in the right order, I can start with any letter that I want. So I'm going to start with K. So the next another valid triangle congruency statement would be triangle KLJ. KLJ is congruent. Now I got to go the same order here. To triangle QRP. Okay, so now when I look at this, first letter K, congruent to Q. Second letter L, congruent to R. Last letter J, congruent to P. So that's another way of writing a valid congruency statement, which will come in handy as you move on in this. Now again, setting up this side, all you're going to do is match them just like we did here. I'm not going to do this one. You're going to get to practice that one, but just make sure your first three letters here should be WXY for your angles, and then congruent signs, just like we have here, and then you go EFG on this side, and then first two letters. Okay, now let's take a look at this bottom part. Again, we're going to look at the congruency statements. Triangle KPM is congruent to triangle AYC. We're going to put it in the same order. I'm looking at KM. KM, first and last here. So what's it congruent to? First and last there. AC. If I want to, which I think would be a good idea, I can mark it as I do it. KM, AC. Let's do 3 since that's the longest side. Okay, then I look at CY. CY going backwards. Last to middle. Last to middle. MP. Line over the top. MP. 1 there, CY there. Okay, then PK. PK, middle to first. YA, middle to first. Okay, now angle Y, middle to middle. Angle P. Angle K, first to first. Angle A. Then angle ACY. ACY. First to last to middle. First to last to middle is congruent to angle KMP. So you're just looking closely at the order and putting it in the same. Doing the same thing here and here. Okay, so that's the first page. Good luck.